So I'm making a short presentation on my new book called Breaking Free from Karma, and it deals a lot on the topic of fate and free will and provides a lot of Eastern and Western perspectives. So firstly, it talks about this topic of fate and free will. Now, fate is something that most of us have heard about, like in terms of that things are fated in our life, and sometimes it's talked about in a very negative way that this if something bad happens, then we just say, oh, this it was just in our fate or our destiny was like that. But it could also be something very positive sometimes, like when somebody marries someone, they say that he or she was my destined partner. So uh, we can think about fate from that angle. But then there is this topic of free will, which is best espoused in the Western circles, where free will is talked in an absolute level, that you have that absolute free will to do whatever you want. You can change your life circumstances. You can create anything that you want. Now, both seem to be kind of extremes in but what I want to present in this book is actually on how this topic of karma, that which I have put in the title, captures the essence of that. So I have made some attempt to explain the Indian philosophical aspect of what is karma, because once we have a clear understanding on what karma is, then we know how much of it can be changed and how much of that is something that we have to learn. So let me talk a little bit here about what this aspect of karma is from an Indian philosophy. So whether it's Buddhism or any of the other well-known standard philosophical schools, Satdarshans, most of them accept karma in terms of that you create certain things in your life and you get the effect of that. If you're being philanthropic, you will actually be reaped with the benefits of that. If not at a physical level, at least at a mental level, you deserve to experience the happiness that you give to others. Now that kind of thinking is at a relative level, so everything in our life in that sense is very interdependent. So whatever happens in our life is actually, we can look at it and say that, oh, this is because we have done something in the past. Of course, factoring in that Indian school's belief of reincarnation, that our mind, our certain physiology of our being actually takes rebirth, life after life. Now, one thing that to have a proper, deeper understanding of this is actually to think of it from the sense of habits. We know that sometimes there are some children who are born who are genius, right from their birth. And then there are some who are very good at sports. Now, what is it that carries forth that tendencies? It is not just that because their parents were like that. It is not just genetical factors. There is certain other habitual tendencies that they carry forward. And this is called, in Indian philosophy, as vasanas or samskaras. So understanding this helps us to understand karma at a micro level, like in our own mind and in our own tendencies. We have certain inclinations. Now, understanding this aspect of habitual tendencies is actually will enable us to exercise what is called as purushartha in Sanskrit, or self-effort. This is different from that absolute free will that Western science talks about. For example, in the West, it is believed that through some neuroscience experiments these days, people have come to the conclusion that even before one makes a certain decision, using certain brain scans and certain experiments, one can actually know what that person is going to decide about. Like, in other words, like whether you're going to decide to have coffee or tea, or make even some major life-changing decisions, there there is a certain ability to understand what you're going to decide even before you make the decision. So this has led many scientists to conclude that really we may not have any free will at all, because everything is already decided in the brain. So this is true in that level when we look at it, that there are certain samskaras from an Indian philosophy that we carry. And this kind of impinges on us on every situation. So these are not manifest that in that we can see it directly, but when situations and when circumstances come across, so these are like seeds, like how a seed of a plant is there. When you water that, or when the right sunlight and effects come, it sprouts into a plant. So similarly, we carry these seeds, samskaras or vasanas. How to overcome these negative vasanas and how to cultivate the positive vasanas has been the endeavor of a lot of Indian spiritual schools for a long time. Yoga, for example, the yogic meditation, they've endeavored to change this to going at the very deep level where one can still one's thoughts and become aware of these intentions that arises and change things at that very subtle level. Mindfulness, which is originally from Buddhist school and which is very popular these days, is also based on this thing of creating a certain awareness at a very deeper level, using our sensations, our mental states, and our own actions, and then be able to change that. From some schools actually talk about it more as changing at an energetical level, the prana, where one's whole energy and consciousness changes, and then they become a completely different person. So at a relative level, all this is true, and all this is necessary for someone to establish and practice upon. However, what I have dealt with also in the final chapters of this book is a non-duality aspect, the absolute truth aspect. Now, understanding this is very important, because this can actually help us to really understand that in this very moment, we can actually experience and realize this, what is called as breaking free from karma. So having this kind of understanding is very pivotal for anyone, whether you are a long-term spiritual practitioner or whether you're just a curious, intelligent seeker of truth. This non-dual aspect, which is discussed a lot in Vedanta and in certain schools of Buddhist philosophy, can actually be embraced by anyone and everyone very easily. And understanding that level of absolute truth is essential for us, because that is when we actually seem to connect to the sense of inherent freedom and goodness that is already in us. To be able to appreciate and understand this, however, it is important that we have to have some level of conditional freedom, which comes through these practices, through all the self-improvement techniques, or whatever practices like energy practices or yogic practices. Because having done that, we can actually come to a level to appreciate and be able to embrace these non-dual truths, the truth of being ever free. And so if somebody were to completely tell you there is no such thing as fate, everything is just a concept, yeah, maybe it's true at an absolute level, but for us, like, we have to understand this whole perspectives, and that is why in this book I've attempted to present all these perspectives before coming to this final truth. So hope you enjoy this, and you're welcome to connect to me through my website and other sources.